"You're just not cut out for this job," Karen said, leaning back in her leather chair, a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. "The West Ridge Hotel project needs someone with stronger leadership skills." I maintained my composure, despite the familiar sting of her words. Through the glass walls of her office, I could see our colleagues glancing curiously in our direction. "The same West Ridge Hotel project where my redesign saved us $300,000? I asked quietly. Karen waved her hand dismissively. "My redesign. I presented it to the board. After I created it." "That's your job, Sophia, to support me." She sighed theatrically. "Look, this isn't working anymore. I need someone who understands their place in the hierarchy." I nodded slowly, a strange calm washing over me. "I understand perfectly. I'll leave on Friday, but Monday will be interesting." Karen rolled her eyes. Always with the cryptic comments, "This is exactly what I'm talking about." "I'm Sophia Vasquez, 49 years old, Senior Project Coordinator at Reynolds Architecture and Design. For 8 years, I've crafted innovative solutions for our clients' most challenging projects. My passion is creating spaces that blend beauty with functionality, but more importantly, staying within budget while exceeding expectations. What stands in my way? Karen Mitchell, 41, my direct supervisor and the firm's youngest partner. She's mastered the art of harvesting others' ideas, particularly mine, and presenting them as her own. Her quick rise through the ranks was built on stolen concepts and misappropriated credit. And now she wants me gone. After years of taking credit for my work, she's decided I'm expendable. Perhaps I've become too vocal about recognition. Perhaps she senses that others are starting to notice the pattern. Whatever her reasons, she's made her move. As I walked back to my desk, I passed the wall of project photos in the main hallway. The West Ridge Hotel, the Pinecrest Community Center, the Lakeview Towers, all projects I'd poured my heart into, all bearing plaques with Karen's name as lead designer. My phone buzzed with a text from David, one of our senior architects. "How'd the meeting go?" Karen looked smug. "As expected," I replied. "She's pushing me out." "That's insane. Your coastal restoration project just won an award." Her coastal restoration project, according to the press release. I settled at my desk, unlocking my drawer to retrieve the external hard drive containing copies of all my original designs, email chains, and documentation. Insurance I'd begun collecting months ago when Karen's behavior shifted from merely taking credit to actively minimizing my contributions. My desk phone rang, our receptionist's extension. "Sophia, there's someone from Archer and Hayes in the lobby asking for you. Says it's about the consultation you did for them." I froze. I'd never done any work for Archer and Hayes, our biggest competitor. "I'll be right down." As I rode the elevator, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. This wasn't just about Karen taking credit anymore. Something else was happening. Something worse than I'd realized. I've spent 27 years in architecture and design. Starting as a drafting assistant in New York, I worked my way through increasingly complex projects while raising my daughter as a single mother. My portfolio expanded from residential renovations to commercial complexes to the sustainable public spaces that became my specialty. 8 years ago, Reynolds Architecture and Design recruited me from a smaller firm in Philadelphia. The promise, a leadership position, creative freedom, and the resources to pursue innovative, sustainable design. For the first 4 years under our previous creative director, I thrived. My coastal restoration project, a series of community spaces built with reclaimed materials that could withstand severe weather events, became the firm's calling card. Then Karen arrived. Originally hired as a project manager, she quickly aligned herself with our aging founder, Harold Reynolds. Her approach was calculated: lavish compliments, strategic lunches, weekend invitations to her Catskills cabin. Within 18 months, she'd secured a partnership, the youngest in the firm's history. Initially, I admired Karen's ambition. Her presentations were polished, her client interactions smooth. She seemed genuinely enthusiastic about my designs, often stopping by my desk to discuss concepts. I interpreted her interest as mentorship, perhaps even friendship. The warning signs appeared gradually. First came the collaborative presentations, where my contributions went unmentioned. Then projects I'd initiated were suddenly reassigned, with Karen overseeing them directly. In meetings, she began interrupting me or rephrasing my ideas as her own. Sophia had an interesting starting point, she would say, but I refined it into something more practical. Harold, nearing retirement and increasingly disengaged, seemed charmed by Karen's confidence. Other partners, mostly men over 60, responded similarly to her carefully cultivated image of competence combined with just enough deference to their experience. My colleagues noticed the pattern. David from the architectural team once whispered, "Did she seriously just present your riverfront concept as her breakthrough idea?" Our receptionist, Jenna, started marking my original designs with timestamps before filing them, giving me silent nods of support. I persevered, believing my work would eventually speak for itself. When we won the Regional Design Excellence Award for the Coastal Project, I anticipated acknowledgement. Instead, Karen accepted the award alone, her speech excluding any mention of my contribution. That night, I began backing up my work, saving emails, documenting my design process with dated entries. Not for confrontation, I still hoped things would improve naturally, but for peace of mind. Looking back, I was naive. Karen wasn't just an opportunist. She was systematic in her approach. Each appropriated design, each stolen concept, was a deliberate step in her career advancement, and I had unintentionally become both her greatest resource and her largest threat. Our relationship had settled into an uneasy pattern, her taking credit, me producing more work, increasingly resentful but conflict-averse. Until yesterday, when she requested my complete portfolio files for archival purposes. Something about her expression, a mixture of entitlement and calculation, finally triggered my suspicions. In the lobby, a well-dressed man in his 50s extended his hand. "Ms. Vasquez, James Donovan from Archer and Hayes. Thank you for meeting with me." "There must be some misunderstanding," I said carefully. "I've never consulted for your firm." His brow furrowed. "That's strange. We have preliminary designs for our Portland waterfront project that were attributed to you. Karen Mitchell shared them last month, said you'd provided consultation." My stomach dropped. The Portland waterfront, a $50 million revitalization project that would transform the city's harbor district. I'd sketched concepts for it after hours, purely as a creative exercise, never intending to share them officially. "May I see these designs?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. He pulled out his tablet, displaying familiar renderings, my renderings, but with subtle modifications. The core concept was unmistakably mine: elevated green spaces connecting historical buildings with flexible areas that could be reconfigured during flood seasons. "These were presented as collaborative work between your firm and ours," James explained. "We were quite impressed. In fact, we've incorporated several elements into our final proposal." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Karen hadn't just taken credit for my work within our firm. She'd been selling my concepts to our competitors. "Who else has seen these designs?" I asked. "Our entire executive team, and we've already presented to the Portland Development Commission. They were quite excited." He paused, studying my expression. "Is there a problem?" "I need to check something with my office. Would you excuse me for a moment?" In the restroom, I leaned against the wall, processing this revelation. Karen had taken my personal sketches, likely from my computer when I stepped away, and positioned them as collaborative work with a competing firm. The ethical violation was staggering. More disturbing was the realization that this explained her sudden push to terminate me. If these designs were moving forward with Portland officials, she needed me gone before I discovered the theft. My phone buzzed with a meeting notification. "All staff, special announcement, 3 p.m. today." When I returned to my desk, activity around the office had intensified. People were talking in hushed groups, giving me concerned glances. David stopped by, lowering his voice. Harold is flying in for the meeting. Something about a transformative partnership. With Archer and Hayes, I guessed. His eyes widened. How did you know? James Donovan is downstairs with my designs for the Portland waterfront. Your designs? David looked confused. Karen's been working on Portland for months. It's what's getting her promoted to creative director. The final piece clicked into place. Karen wasn't just pushing me out. She was stepping into a role created specifically for her visionary work on Portland, work she had stolen from me. I opened my email to find a message from HR detailing my transition package. They weren't even waiting until Friday. Karen had accelerated my departure to today. My hand hovered over the external hard drive in my drawer. It contained everything: original files with metadata proving my authorship, emails, documentation of my design process. Enough evidence to expose Karen's systematic theft. But would anyone believe me? Karen had spent years cultivating relationships with leadership while systematically isolating me. It would be her word against mine, and she'd already positioned me as underperforming and resentful. I closed the drawer without taking the drive. I needed time to think, to plan my next steps carefully. This wasn't just about credit anymore. It was about professional ethics, potentially legal issues, and my entire career. The conference room filled quickly for the 3 p.m. meeting. I chose a seat near the back, ignoring the whispers and glances. Karen stood at the front beside Harold Reynolds, looking triumphant in a tailored navy suit, the one she reserved for important presentations. Harold cleared his throat. Today marks an exciting new chapter for Reynolds Architecture and Design. We're announcing a strategic partnership with Archer and Hayes for the Portland waterfront revitalization. On the screen behind him appeared my designs, the ones James Donovan had shown me earlier, now branded with both companies' logos. This collaboration, spearheaded by Karen Mitchell, represents the innovative thinking that drives our firm forward, Harold continued. Karen's vision for Portland has already impressed city officials and secured preliminary approval. Karen stepped forward, beaming. Thank you, Harold. This project exemplifies our commitment to sustainable urban renewal. She clicked through my sketches, explaining concepts I'd developed over countless late nights, as if they were her own inspiration. Each slide twisted the knife deeper. To lead this exciting new direction, Harold announced, I'm pleased to name Karen our new creative director, effective immediately. Applause filled the room. Karen accepted the promotion with practiced humility, thanking Harold for his mentorship. Her gaze briefly met mine, a flicker of warning in her eyes. When the presentation ended, I approached Harold. Could I speak with you privately about the Portland project? Of course, Sophia. Let's use my office. Hope sparked. Harold had always been fair, if somewhat detached. Perhaps he'd listen, especially with proof of Karen's misconduct. Karen intercepted us in the hallway. Harold, we should discuss the transition plan for my role. And didn't you have that call with the board at 3:30? Right, yes. He checked his watch. Sophia, can this wait until tomorrow? It's regarding the origin of the Portland designs, I said firmly. Karen's smile tightened. Actually, Harold, that reminds me. There are some concerns about Sophia's performance I've been meaning to discuss. Oh, Harold looked between us. Resource allocation, deadline issues, and some confusion about project ownership. Her implication was clear. She was framing me as the one with ethical problems. Let's address this now, Harold decided, gesturing us both into his office. For 20 minutes, I listened as Karen systematically undermined me. She presented doctored timelines suggesting I'd claimed credit for collaborative work. She referenced performance issues that had never appeared in my reviews. Worst of all, she implied I'd accessed her computer and copied her Portland concepts. That's completely untrue, I finally interrupted. I have proof that... Sophia, Harold sighed. This isn't productive. Karen has documented her concerns thoroughly. Given these issues and the restructuring around our new partnership, we think it's best to accelerate your departure. You're terminating me today? Without investigating her claims? Karen produced a folder. Your separation agreement, standard terms, 2-month severance. We'll need you to clear out your desk by the end of the day. I stared at the document, rage and disbelief warring within me. And if I dispute this? Harold's expression hardened. We have documentation of performance issues going back months. Fighting this would only damage your professional reputation. We both knew what he meant. Karen had been building a case against me, manipulating records to create a narrative of incompetence. Even with my evidence, a legal battle would be messy, public, and potentially career-ending. I understand, I said quietly, taking the folder. Karen smiled sympathetically. I'll help communicate this transition to the team. As I left Harold's office, my phone buzzed with an email notification. Subject: Portland Waterfront Project, confidential. From an address I didn't recognize. I opened it to find detailed information about the Portland project's upcoming phases, timelines, budgets, stakeholder information, along with a message. You should see this. Not right what they're doing to you. A friend. For a moment, I considered forwarding it to Harold as proof of my involvement. Then I realized, this wasn't help. It was a trap. If I shared confidential project information, especially after being terminated, Karen could accuse me of corporate espionage. I cleared my desk methodically, packing personal items under the watchful eye of an HR representative. The external hard drive with my evidence went into my bag first. Family photos, design awards, and the small succulent plant my daughter had given me followed. 8 years reduced to a single cardboard box. I'm sorry it ended this way, Jenna whispered as she hugged me goodbye at reception. We all know what really happened. Thank you, I said, touched by her support. Take care of yourself. Outside, I hailed a cab, giving the driver my address before sinking into the back seat. Only then did I allow myself to acknowledge the magnitude of what had happened. My career at Reynolds was over. My reputation potentially damaged. 8 years of work appropriated by someone else. My phone buzzed with texts from concerned colleagues. I silenced it, needing space to think. The separation agreement sat heavily in my bag, its terms simultaneously generous and insulting. 2 months' salary in exchange for my silence and a legally binding admission of inadequate performance. At home, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. First, I backed up all evidence to a secure cloud account. Then I began researching my options, making notes on employment law and intellectual property rights. A knock at my door interrupted my research. Through the peephole, I saw David looking worried. I came to check on you, he said when I opened the door. Things happened so fast today. I invited him in, grateful for friendly company. Karen had it all planned. The termination, the partnership announcement, her promotion. It's worse than you know, David said, accepting the wine I offered. After you left, Karen told everyone you'd been stealing her designs for months. She implied you were sharing confidential work with competitors. I nearly dropped my glass. She's accusing me of exactly what she did. She showed emails, Sophia. Messages that looked like they came from your account, sending designs to outside firms. That's impossible. I never sent... I paused, a horrible thought forming. When did she say these emails were sent? David thought for a moment. Last month, mostly. She had dates. When I was on vacation in Vancouver, I realized, she had access to my computer then. She must have used my email account. That makes sense, David agreed. But she presented it convincingly. Even people who like you were starting to doubt. I felt sick. Karen hadn't just stolen my work and fired me. She was systematically destroying my professional reputation, ensuring I couldn't challenge her version of events. There's something else, David said hesitantly. A rumor that Archer and Hayes might hire you as a consultant after your non-compete period. What? Why would they? Then it hit me. That's her insurance policy. She's setting it up to look like I sold my designs to them all along. David nodded grimly. If you take any action against Reynolds, she'll use that narrative to discredit you. After David left, I sat stunned, processing the elaborate trap Karen had constructed. She hadn't just outmaneuvered me, she'd planned multiple moves ahead, anticipating my potential responses and neutralizing them before I could act. My phone rang, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ms. Vasquez? James Donovan from Archer and Hayes again. I wanted to follow up on our conversation. Mr. Donovan, I can't discuss anything related to Reynolds or the Portland project. I'm no longer with the firm. Actually, he said, that's precisely why I'm calling. Our leadership team was impressed with the concepts Karen attributed to you. We'd like to discuss a potential position. It was confirmation of exactly what David had warned me about, the job offer that would cement Karen's narrative of my betrayal. I need to consider my options, I replied carefully. Can I call you next week? After hanging up, I opened my laptop again, navigating to my email archive. I searched systematically through 6 years of correspondence with Karen, looking for anything that might help my case. In a folder of project communications from 3 years ago, I found it, an email chain I'd completely forgotten. Karen, seeking my input on a struggling project, had explicitly acknowledged my authorship of the coastal restoration design. Need your magic touch on this one, she'd written. The kind of innovative approach that made your coastal project such a success. It wasn't just evidence of my work. It was Karen, in her own words, confirming I was the true creator of the award-winning design she now claimed as her own. With renewed determination, I spent the weekend building my case. The email I'd discovered was just the beginning. I worked methodically through my archives, constructing a timeline of Karen's appropriation of my work. By Sunday night, I had compiled a detailed dossier, original design files with metadata proving my authorship, email chains showing the evolution of concepts Karen later claimed, performance reviews contradicting her claims of my inadequacy, and testimonials from former clients who had worked directly with me. Monday morning, I prepared to take action. My plan was straightforward. Submit a formal complaint to Reynolds' board of directors, complete with my evidence, then consult with an attorney about potential legal claims. As I reviewed my documents one final time, an email notification appeared, from Harold Reynolds. Sophia, concerning developments have emerged regarding the Portland project. Need to speak with you immediately. Available to meet this morning. Hope flared briefly. Perhaps Harold had discovered Karen's deception on his own. I responded, agreeing to meet at a coffee shop near the office at 10 a.m. Harold looked haggard when he arrived, the confident firm leader replaced by an anxious older man. Thank you for meeting, he began. I'll be direct. After our announcement, Portland officials requested additional background on the design concepts. They were impressed with the innovation and wanted to feature the designer's process in their public relations materials. I waited, sensing what was coming. Karen couldn't answer their technical questions, he continued. When pressed, she became evasive. One official recognized elements similar to your work on the coastal restoration project and asked specifically about your involvement. And what did Karen say? I asked. Harold grimaced. She claimed you had been her mentor, guiding her understanding of sustainable design principles. Despite everything, I laughed. Her mentor? She's been taking credit for my work for years. I'm beginning to see that, Harold admitted. Portland has paused the project pending clarification of the design authorship. Our partnership with Archer and Hayes is in jeopardy. Why tell me this? I've been terminated, remember? Because Karen insists you have the original files that could resolve this issue. She's claiming you took them when you left. The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, Karen was manipulating the situation, trying to force me to hand over my evidence. I have the original files, I confirmed, along with proof that they're my work, not Karen's. Harold leaned forward. Sophia, the firm's reputation is at stake. We need to resolve this quickly and quietly. Reinstate me, I said. Full position, clear my record, and remove Karen from any project involving my designs. That's not possible. Karen is already announced as creative director. Then I'll take my evidence to Portland officials directly. and to the architectural press. Harold paled. "You'd damage the entire firm to get back at Karen?" "I'd ensure proper credit for my work," I corrected. "The damage to Reynolds would be collateral to Karen's actions, not mine." As we reached this impasse, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Archer and Hayes announces withdrawal from Portland Waterfront Partnership. I showed Harold the headline. His face fell. "It's already unraveling," I said gently. "You have one chance to control the narrative before this becomes a public scandal." Harold stared at his coffee, clearly calculating options. "What exactly do you want, Sophia?" "A public acknowledgement of my work. Karen removed from any project involving my designs, and I want to present my Portland concepts to the city officials personally." "And the termination?" "I haven't decided yet, but I won't sign the separation agreement." Harold nodded slowly. "I'll need to consult with the board, but the Portland situation requires immediate attention." As he left, I received another email from James Donovan at Archer and Hayes. "Portland officials requesting clarification on design authorship. Would value your direct input on concepts Karen Mitchell presented." A separate email arrived from a Portland city planner, reaching out directly regarding waterfront revitalization concepts, questions about sustainable elements in the design. While Harold deliberated with his board, the situation was evolving beyond his, or Karen's, control. The very clients Karen had impressed with my work were now reaching out to me directly. For the first time since my termination, I smiled. Karen had built her career by taking credit for others' work. Now, her inability to explain the very designs she'd claimed would expose her fraud to everyone who mattered. Tuesday morning arrived with a sense of inevitability. Following several conversations with Portland officials and Archer and Hayes executives, I had agreed to a joint meeting at Reynolds' office to clarify the design authorship issue. I dressed carefully, choosing a professional outfit that projected confidence without ostentation. The external hard drive with my evidence went into my bag, along with printed copies of key documents. This time, I was fully prepared. The conference room fell silent when I entered. Harold sat at the head of the table, flanked by two board members. Representatives from Portland and Archer and Hayes filled one side. Karen sat alone on the other, her usual poise replaced by tense vigilance. "Thank you all for coming," Harold began. "We're here to address questions regarding the Portland waterfront project designs." Karen immediately took control. "I'd like to start by expressing my disappointment that confusion has arisen about my work. While Sophia contributed some initial feedback, the concepts were entirely—" "Actually," I interrupted, connecting my laptop to the projector, "I think it's better if I demonstrate." For the next 20 minutes, I methodically presented my evidence. Original design files with timestamps predating Karen's creation by months, process documentation showing the evolution of concepts, and most devastatingly, emails where Karen herself acknowledged my authorship of various elements. "As you can see," I concluded, "these designs represent my work, developed independently and without authorization from Reynolds after Karen took my previous coastal restoration project concepts without attribution." The Portland officials exchanged glances. "These are precisely the technical details we've been requesting," one said pointedly to Karen, "details you weren't able to provide." "This is absurd," Karen protested, her voice rising. "She's manipulated those timestamps. She's trying to sabotage me because she's jealous of my promotion." "Actually," said the Archer and Hayes representative, "our technical team has verified the metadata. These are unquestionably the original files." "Furthermore," added Harold quietly, "our IT department has confirmed unauthorized access to Sophia's computer during her vacation last month." Karen's face drained of color as she realized her carefully constructed narrative was collapsing. "Harold, you can't possibly believe—" "Karen," he interrupted firmly, "I think it's time for you to leave." Karen's downfall was swift and comprehensive. Escorted from the building that afternoon, she left behind a trail of fabrications that unraveled with remarkable speed once people started asking the right questions. The board meeting that followed was equally decisive. Harold, fighting to salvage the firm's reputation, announced my reinstatement with a promotion to creative director. The Portland officials, impressed by my original concepts and detailed knowledge, requested I personally lead the waterfront project moving forward. Most satisfying was the company-wide email Harold sent the following day, publicly acknowledging my contributions to Reynolds' award-winning projects and clarifying that the designs Karen had claimed were, in fact, my work. "I underestimated you," Harold admitted when we met privately. "I should have listened when you tried to tell me what was happening." "Yes, you should have," I agreed, not willing to absolve him too easily. 8 years of my work was attributed to someone else while you looked the other way. His chastened expression confirmed he understood the magnitude of his failure. 1 month later, I stood before the Portland Development Commission, presenting my refined vision for their waterfront. The project was back on track, with both Reynolds and Archer and Hayes collaborating under my direction, a partnership that now acknowledged all contributors properly. Karen, meanwhile, had become a cautionary tale in our industry. After 3 other designers came forward with similar stories of appropriated work, her reputation was in tatters. Last I heard, she had left architecture entirely. As for me, my career entered a new phase. The spotlight I'd avoided for years now felt less intimidating. I established clear protocols for design attribution at Reynolds, mentored younger staff, and finally received the recognition my work deserved. "Was it worth it?" my daughter asked over dinner, celebrating my first major project launch as creative director. "All those years of someone else taking credit?" I considered the question, remembering Karen's dismissive words that fateful day. "You're just not cut out for this job." "No," I replied with a smile. "But the vindication at the end, that was definitely worth waiting for." The diary fell from between 2 boxes in the attic, its leather cover worn smooth by time and handling. My mother's elegant handwriting filled its pages, the same handwriting that had signed my birthday cards, written lunch notes, marked the height chart on the kitchen wall until her death 17 years ago. My name is Isabel, and at 31 I was finally cleaning out my childhood home's attic. My father had moved to Florida with Teresa, my stepmother, leaving me to prepare the house for sale. What I found would shatter everything I thought I knew about my mother's death. "Something isn't right," my mother had written in an entry dated 3 months before she died. "I saw Teresa with Victor again today. They didn't notice me at the cafe. She passed him documents under the table, papers with our family letterhead." I sat among the dusty boxes, my hands trembling as I read. Teresa had entered our lives 6 months before my mother's death, initially as my father's legal consultant at his manufacturing company. Victor, our family lawyer for 20 years, had introduced them. The diary entries grew more urgent. "Victor's been pushing James to revise the estate planning, says it needs modernizing. But why now? And why won't he discuss it when I'm present?" I remembered those days differently. Or rather, I remembered what I'd been told about them. How my mother had become paranoid near the end. How she'd imagined conspiracies due to the medication she was taking for her heart condition. "Teresa's not who she seems," my mother had written. "I've seen her true face when James isn't looking. The way she watches him, calculating. The way she's already measuring the house, suggesting updates that would erase every trace of me." A sharp creak from the attic stairs made me jump, but it was just the old house settling, not Teresa's perfectly manicured footsteps. She never came here anyway, claimed she was allergic to dust. The final entries were frantic, the elegant handwriting becoming jagged. "Found proof today. Documents in Victor's office. He's been working with Teresa for months before he introduced her to James. They're planning something. Need to tell James, show him the evidence. Meeting Victor tomorrow to confront him." My mother died the next day. Heart failure, they said. Natural causes. I closed the diary, my mind racing. All these years I'd felt uneasy around Teresa, but dismissed it as normal step-family tension. The way she'd gradually influenced my father, isolated him from old friends, suggested he transfer assets for tax purposes. My phone buzzed. A text from Teresa. "Darling, how's the attic cleaning going? Don't bother with old papers. Just toss everything." I looked at the diary in my hands, then at my mother's final words. "Must protect Isabel's inheritance. Must stop them before—" I spent that night reading every entry, tracing my mother's growing suspicions through the months before her death. She'd documented everything. Meetings she'd observed between Teresa and Victor, overheard phone calls, documents she'd glimpsed on Victor's desk. "Teresa's background story doesn't add up," one entry read. "Says she grew up in Seattle, but her knowledge of the area is vague. Claims to have graduated from Stanford Law, but when I mentioned professors I know there, she changed the subject." My mother had started investigating, quietly gathering evidence. She noted discrepancies in Teresa's work history, gaps in her background that no one else had bothered to question. Even then, Teresa had been playing the perfect professional, the sympathetic friend to my father, recently widowed from her own spouse. "Found something disturbing today," my mother wrote 2 weeks before her death. "Teresa's late husband? He didn't die in a car accident like she claimed. He's very much alive, living in Arizona with his actual wife. Who is this woman really?" I pulled out my laptop, hands shaking as I searched for property records in Arizona. There it was. Richard Conway, Teresa's supposed late husband, still living with his wife of 30 years. They'd never divorced. Teresa's entire history was a fabrication. Another entry caught my eye. "Victor's been pushing James to sign new documents, something about modernizing the trust structure. But the papers I saw on his desk, they're designed to shift control of the company. Complicated legal language about successor interests and contingent beneficiaries." Those same terms had appeared in documents my father signed last year. Papers Teresa had assured me were routine updates to protect the family's interests. I'd felt pressured to sign too, Victor explaining rapidly about tax efficiency and liability protection. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Teresa. "Found any interesting family photos up there? I'd love to see them. Maybe I'll come help you sort through everything tomorrow." I thought about her perfect smile, the way she'd positioned herself as the caring stepmother while slowly taking control of everything. The house, the company, my father's social circle. Even now, she was probably worried I'd find something that would expose her carefully constructed lies. I needed help, someone who could understand the legal documents my mother had referenced. But I couldn't trust Victor. His fingerprints were all over this conspiracy. I needed an outside perspective, someone with no connection to Teresa or the family business. Opening my contacts, I found the number for Sarah Chen, a law school friend who specialized in estate litigation. If anyone could help me unravel this web of deception, it would be her. Sarah met me at a cafe far from my usual haunts, where there was no chance of running into anyone who might report back to Teresa. I brought the diary, along with copies of all the estate documents I could find. "This is interesting," Sarah said, flipping through the papers. "These trust modifications aren't just updates. They're completely restructuring ownership control. See this clause here? It essentially gives Teresa veto power over any major business decisions once your father turns 65. He turns 65 next month, I realized, my coffee growing cold as we pored over the documents. And look at this. The succession planning puts any future children of Teresa's ahead of you in terms of inheritance rights. Has she mentioned wanting children? I thought about Teresa's recent hints about feeling maternal, her sudden interest in family planning at 45. She's been talking about IVF, suggesting Dad's not too old to have more kids. Of course she has. Sarah's expression darkened. Because any child she has with your father would give her permanent control of everything. The company, the properties, the family trust. You'd be effectively disinherited. I pulled out my mother's diary. Mom suspected something like this. She was going to confront Victor the day she died. Sarah looked up sharply. The day she died? Was there an autopsy? Heart failure, I said. She had a pre-existing condition. Everyone said the stress of her paranoia probably contributed. Paranoia that turns out to be completely justified. Sarah made some notes. We need to move carefully here. These people, Teresa and Victor, they've orchestrated a sophisticated long-term fraud. If your mother was about to expose them..." She left the implication hanging in the air. I thought about my mother's last day, how she'd seemed anxious but determined when she left for her meeting with Victor. "What should I do?" I asked. "First, we document everything. I have a forensic accountant who can trace the money movements. Then we need to establish Teresa's real identity. Clearly, she's not who she claims to be." My phone buzzed. Teresa again. "Darling, I noticed you took some papers from the attic. Anything interesting? I'd love to look through them with you." "She's getting nervous," Sarah observed. "Good. Let her wonder what you found. But be careful. People who've orchestrated something this elaborate can be dangerous when cornered." I thought about my mother's final diary entry, her determination to protect me, to expose the truth. 17 years too late, I was finally picking up where she left off. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah's investigation uncovered layers of deception. Teresa's real name was Teresa Blackwood. She'd pulled this same scheme twice before, insinuating herself into wealthy families, manipulating estate planning, then vanishing with significant assets once her position was secured. "Look at this," Sarah said, spreading documents across her office desk. 3 different identities, 3 wealthy widowers, 3 compromised family trusts. She works with different lawyers each time, but the pattern is identical. I studied the photos. Teresa with different hair colors, different names, but always the same calculating smile. Always positioning herself as the perfect second wife while slowly taking control. And Victor? He's been disbarred in 2 states for ethics violations. Somehow got licensed here under a slightly different name. He specializes in finding vulnerable wealthy families, then introducing them to his clients, women like Teresa who know how to play the long game. My phone buzzed with Teresa's hourly check-ins. "We should have lunch soon, darling. I'm worried about you spending so much time in that dusty attic. It's not healthy to dwell on the past." I showed Sarah the text. "She's been pushing me to hand over anything I found up there. Says she's concerned about my obsession with old papers." "She's worried," Sarah noted. "Probably realizes the diary is missing. Have you told your father anything?" I shook my head. Over the years, Teresa had carefully isolated him, suggesting moves to new cities, subtle distance from old friends. Now in Florida, he was completely under her influence. "We need solid proof before approaching him," Sarah advised. "Something he can't ignore, even with Teresa whispering in his ear." That proof arrived unexpectedly. A private investigator Sarah hired found Teresa's previous victim, Robert Henderson, a retired executive who'd lost millions to her scheme. "She was Teresa Morgan then," he told us over video call, "claimed to be a grieving widow just like me. By the time I realized what she'd done, she'd vanished with half my assets. The lawyer who helped her? Sounds just like your Victor." I thought about my mother's final diary entry, her desperate need to protect our family from this same fate. Now, 17 years later, I had the evidence she'd died trying to find. My confrontation with Teresa was carefully orchestrated. Sarah advised me to meet her in a public place, with witnesses nearby and recording devices ready. I chose the same cafe where my mother had spotted her with Victor years ago. "Darling, you seem tense," Teresa said, settling into her chair with practiced grace. "I've been so worried. All this time spent digging through old things. It's not healthy." "Actually, I found something interesting in the attic," I replied, sliding my mother's diary across the table. "Mom's last diary. You remember my mom, don't you? Or should I say, Teresa Blackwood remembers her." The change in her expression was subtle but immediate. The warm concern vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her eyes fixed on the diary. "And honestly, Isabel, these conspiracy theories are concerning, just like your poor mother. Like my mother who caught you plotting with Victor, who was going to expose you the day she died." I kept my voice steady, even as my hands shook under the table. "We found Robert Henderson, by the way, and the Palmers. You know, Your previous victims? She didn't flinch, but her knuckles whitened around her coffee cup. Those are ridiculous accusations. Your father will be very upset to hear you're spreading such lies. My father will be more upset to learn his wife is already married to someone else. Richard Conway sends his regards, by the way. His actual wife was very interested to hear about you. For the first time, real fear flickered across her face. Whatever you think you know. I know everything. I cut her off. The fake identity, the previous scams, Victor's disbarment. The only thing I don't know is what really happened the day my mother died. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. You clearly need help, just like your mother did. Sit down, I said quietly. Unless you want to explain everything to the FBI agents at the next table. Financial fraud across state lines is a federal crime, isn't it? She sank back into her chair, that perfect mask finally cracking. What do you want? The truth, starting with what you and Victor did to my mother. Teresa's composure crumbled completely. Her face twisted into something ugly and desperate, a look I'd never seen beneath her polished exterior. Your mother was going to ruin everything, she spat, her voice barely above a whisper. She'd found proof that Victor and I had worked together before, documents that showed my real identity. She was going to show your father that morning. My hands gripped the edge of the table. What did you do? We didn't mean for her to die, Teresa said, her eyes darting around the cafe. Victor just gave her something to make her confused during the meeting, to make her seem unstable, her heart condition. We didn't know it would. The FBI agents were already moving toward our table. They'd heard everything through the wire I was wearing. I watched as the color drained from Teresa's face when she realized what was happening. Teresa Blackwood, one agent said, showing his badge. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and involvement in the death of Catherine Andrews. I sat there, my whole body shaking, as they led Teresa away. Sarah appeared at my side, squeezing my shoulder. Victor's been arrested too, she said quietly. They picked him up at his office 20 minutes ago. My phone buzzed, Dad calling. He'd just been interviewed by the FBI at his home in Florida. Isabel, his voice cracked. Is it true? All of it? Yes, Dad. I found Mom's diary. She was trying to protect us. She knew what Teresa was planning. There was a long pause. I should have listened to your mother's concerns. Should have seen through Teresa's act. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. For the first time since finding the diary, I felt tears roll down my cheeks. Not tears of anger or frustration, but of relief. My mom's last fight was finally over. She'd protected me through her words, through her determination to uncover the truth, even when she couldn't be here to do it herself. The evidence my mom had gathered, combined with what Sarah's investigation uncovered, was overwhelming. Teresa and Victor had orchestrated similar schemes before, but they'd never killed anyone. My mom's death may have been unintentional, but they were still responsible. As I left the cafe that day, I felt lighter somehow. The weight of years of unanswered questions, of subtle manipulations and hidden truths, was finally lifting. My mom's diary, her final gift to me, had exposed not just Teresa's deception, but also given me back something I'd lost. The truth about who my mother really was, and the fierce love that had driven her to protect her family until the very end. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The house I'd been preparing to sell became a source of comfort rather than painful memories. I spent evenings in my mom's old reading nook, going through her diary again and again, this time not searching for clues but simply connecting with her voice, her thoughts, her love for us that shone through every page. My dad moved back from Florida, temporarily staying in a condo nearby while the legal mess got sorted out. The investigation revealed that Teresa had already started transferring small amounts of money to hidden accounts. She'd been preparing her exit strategy, just like with her previous victims. If it hadn't been for my mom's diary, we might have lost everything. I keep thinking about your mother's last days, my dad said one evening as we sat in the backyard, the same garden my mom had loved tending, The way Teresa and Victor dismissed her concerns made me doubt my own wife's sanity. I can never forgive myself for that. I reached over and squeezed his hand. The anger I'd felt toward him had mellowed into understanding. Teresa had manipulated everyone, playing a long game with the expertise of a career con artist. Even Sarah said she'd never seen someone this calculating. The FBI investigation uncovered more victims. 5 families, not 3 like we'd initially thought. Each time, Teresa had used a different name, different lawyer, but the same careful grooming of wealthy widowers. She'd perfected her act over the years, but my mom had seen through it. My brave, intelligent mother hadn't been paranoid. She'd been the only one clear-headed enough to spot the predator in our midst. The discovery about my mom's death hit the hardest. The medical examiner reviewed her case and found traces of a drug that would have interacted fatally with her heart medication. Not enough to rule it a homicide back then, but combined with Teresa's confession at the cafe, it was enough now. They were charging both her and Victor with involuntary manslaughter. I found myself spending more time at the office, diving back into my architectural work with renewed energy. My colleagues noticed the change in me. "You seem different," my assistant mentioned one day, "more confident somehow." She was right. Unraveling Teresa's deception had awakened something in me, a strength I inherited from my mom but had never fully embraced. I started speaking up more in meetings, pushing back against compromises I would have accepted before. The way my mom refused to back down when she knew something was wrong, that was part of me too. The estate lawyer helped us untangle the mess of documents Teresa and Victor had created. Most of their changes weren't even legal. They'd counted on no one examining the papers too closely. My dad insisted on putting everything in my name now. "It's what your mother wanted," he said, "to protect your inheritance." But it wasn't about the money. It was about justice, not just for us, but for every family Teresa had targeted. Each new revelation in the case brought another layer of vindication for my mom. The paranoid woman had been right all along, and now everyone knew it. I kept the diary on my bedside table, no longer hidden away in a dusty attic. Sometimes, late at night, I'd open it and read random entries from happier days, when my mom wrote about her hopes for my future, her love for our family. "Must protect Isabel's inheritance," she'd written at the end. And she had. Not just the material inheritance, but something far more precious: the truth. Sarah helped me prepare for the court proceedings. Teresa and Victor both took plea deals. They knew their scheme had finally unraveled completely. The day of their sentencing, I decided to make a victim impact statement. I needed them to hear what they'd stolen from me, from all of us. Standing at the podium in that courtroom, I looked directly at Teresa, her designer outfits replaced by prison beige. "You didn't just try to steal our family's assets," I said, my voice steady. "You stole 17 years of truth from me. Years I spent doubting my mother's judgment, believing she'd lost touch with reality in her final days. But she was the only one who saw you clearly." Victor couldn't even meet my eyes, staring down at his hands. His legal career was over. The bar associations in all 3 states were revoking his licenses permanently. The other families came forward too, each one sharing a similar story of manipulation and betrayal. Robert Henderson hugged me after the sentencing. "Your mother," he said. "She did what none of us could. She left behind the evidence that finally stopped them." My dad started seeing a therapist to process everything. "I need to understand how I let myself be so thoroughly deceived," he told me. "How I could doubt your mother like that." Slowly, he began reconnecting with old friends, rebuilding the social circle Teresa had systematically dismantled. The company needed attention too. Years of Teresa's influence had left their mark on the business. I took a leave of absence from my architectural firm to help my dad restructure things. It felt right, stepping into this role. Not because anyone pressured me, but because I chose it. My mom would have liked that. One afternoon, I found myself in her old office at the house, the one Teresa had quickly converted into her meditation room after moving in. I stripped away the bland beige paint Teresa had used to cover my mom's vibrant blue walls. Under the windowsill, I found a small heart my mom had carved, with our initials inside. She'd shown it to me once, her secret rebellion against the perfect showroom house Teresa wanted. "I'm thinking of keeping the house," I told my dad over dinner. "Not selling it after all." He smiled. "Your mother would love that. She always said this place had a soul." I nodded. "I keep finding little pieces of her everywhere. Things Teresa tried to erase but couldn't quite manage. The upcoming trial for my mom's death would be harder, but I was ready for it. The prosecutors were confident about the involuntary manslaughter charges. Teresa's confession at the cafe, combined with the new medical evidence, painted a clear picture of their desperate attempt to silence my mom. "You're so much like her," my dad said one evening, looking at an old photo of my mom in her garden. "She never backed down when she knew she was right, even when everyone else thought she was wrong." I touched the photo gently. "She never got to see them face justice." "No," my dad agreed, "but she made sure you would. Everything she wrote down, every piece of evidence she gathered, she did that for you." I thought about my mom's final diary entry, cut short by her confrontation with Victor. She didn't get to finish her last message, but she'd said enough. She'd given me the weapons I needed to fight back, to expose the truth, to reclaim our family's story. They say time heals all wounds, but I think the truth heals them better. It's been 6 months since Teresa's sentencing, and I'm finally feeling like myself again, or maybe a stronger version of myself. The nightmares about my mom's last day have stopped. Instead, I dream about her in her garden, smiling, proud of what I've become. The company is thriving now that we've cleared out all of Teresa's toxic influences. I split my time between running the financial side of things and my architectural work. My dad's retired for real this time, but he still drops by to mentor some of our younger employees. The light is back in his eyes, something I hadn't even realized was missing during the Teresa years. Sarah and I started a foundation in my mom's name, helping families affected by estate fraud. You'd be surprised how common it is. Predators like Teresa targeting vulnerable widows and widowers. We offer legal support, forensic accounting, and most importantly, a community of people who understand. Robert Henderson is on our board of directors, turning his pain into purpose just like we did. My mom's diary sits in a special place in my office now, a reminder of her courage and determination. Sometimes when I'm facing a tough decision, I'll open it randomly and read an entry. Her wisdom still guides me. Her strength still flows through my veins. The woman who saw through Teresa's perfect mask, who fought to protect her family until her last breath. That's my mother's real legacy to me. The house feels different too. No more walking on eggshells, no more hiding who we are. I've filled it with colors my mom would have loved, hanging her art back on the walls where it belongs. This isn't just the house where I unmasked a con artist anymore. It's home again, finally. Last week, I found one last letter from my mom, tucked inside an old book in her office. Not part of her diary, but a separate note written just days before she died. "My dearest Isabel," it began, "if you're reading this, trust your instincts. I've raised you to see the truth, even when others try to hide it." I keep thinking about how my mom fought alone, carrying the weight of her discoveries while everyone dismissed her concerns. But she never gave up. She kept gathering evidence, kept writing in her diary, kept trying to protect us until the very end. She made sure the truth would find its way to me, even if she couldn't be here to reveal it herself. The trial for my mom's death starts next month. Teresa and Victor will face new charges, their carefully constructed facades completely shattered. But I'm not afraid anymore. Every time I walk into that courtroom, I'll bring my mom's strength with me. Her diary rests in my bag like a shield, her words guiding me forward. My dad said something beautiful yesterday as we sat in my mom's garden, now blooming again after years of Teresa's neglect. "Your mother's greatest gift wasn't exposing Teresa," he said. "It was showing you your own power, the power to stand up, to seek justice, to protect what matters." He's right. Through her diary, my mom taught me that one person's determination to uncover the truth can change everything. She couldn't finish her fight, but she made sure I could finish it for her. And now, sitting in this garden she loved so much, watching the flowers she planted bloom again, I know that some legacies can never be stolen. They just grow stronger with time.